Hello everyone. So today I thought I would go ahead and film a book about reading slumps and kind of how to work your way out of them. I feel like if you have been watching any of my videos this year, you kind of know it was just like not my best reading year. I was really struggling to find the excitement and enjoyment in reading and books in general. I'm still like reading, so I definitely feel like for me a reading slump is usually more like the energy I have around reading and less like the amount that I'm reading. So I came up with a few tips and tricks to hopefully share with you guys to help you work your way out of a reading slump if and when you get to one, which I feel like if you are someone who's read their whole life, like you definitely know like slumps just like will happen. Sometimes they last, a month or two, sometimes they last most of the year, like it did for me last year. And then I've also come up with some book genres, types of books, and then like book recommendations to hopefully, again, help you work yourself out of the reading slump you might be in. So let's go ahead and get started. So my first tip is kind of a 2-for-1 tip. I feel like most people prefer one or the other, but I feel like they kind of like end up giving you the same result at the end of the day. And it's to either set a goal page number that you'd like to read every day. So that's maybe like I'm going to read 50 pages every day for the next like 2 weeks. And that 50 pages can be split in between, 4 books, or it can be all in the same book, just depending on like what kind of mood you're in and what you're reading. Or to set a timer every day for, I'm going to read 20 minutes every single day. And then you can just like do that whenever you'd like. And again, you can split that between like multiple books if that would help you actually hit the number. I think this tip does really well for people who love to check things off a list. They love to feel like their hobbies are like productive. They love to like set goals and like meet them. I feel like if you are one of those types of people, you should definitely try this tip, but I would definitely like start small and work yourself up into like a bigger page goal or a large amount of time set aside for reading every day, because I feel like the whole thing of this is to like make you feel like good about reading again. So like, if your goal is only 20 pages a day and you hit it all the time, I feel like it's gonna like make you excited, make you feel good. So you're gonna like keep up with the habit even when you're not necessarily like keeping track of it anymore. I definitely enjoy having a page goal every day more than I do a timer goal. I just think I like that there's a very specific number to reach, and I feel like if I'm in a reading slump, I feel like it's usually because I'm like reading books that are just like dragging, and I feel like it's taking me literally so long to get through. And so I feel like for me, reading 50 pages usually takes longer than, maybe like a certain amount of time that I would actually set for myself, especially if it's in a book that drags. And so I feel like a page number just definitely guarantees that I'm like moving through the books that I'm reading. But this one like definitely works for me. But again, I'm somebody who like loves to check things off a list and like loves to feel like I'm like doing something productive. So yeah, that's definitely a good one. My next tip is to basically just do the opposite of what you've been doing this whole time. So if you have been reading shorter books, I would pick up longer books. And if you've been reading longer books, I'd pick up shorter books. I just feel like a lot of people get into a reading slump because they are just trying to do the same things over and over because like for whatever reason, you're just like stuck in this little rut and you need something to spice it up. So I feel like if you've been reading shorter books, you're probably just like not getting invested in the characters enough, because I feel like shorter books, it's hard for the author to actually like get their points across and get you like actually like invested in the story and in the characters and like the themes in the book, because they don't have as much time to like build that relationship with you. So I feel like if that's maybe like what you're struggling with, a longer book will probably do that for you. And again, I feel like if you've been reading longer books and you're just kind of like over the like monotony of like reading about everybody's like day-to-day life, and oh my god, I don't really care what you eat for breakfast every day of the week, because usually longer books give you like a lot more detail. I feel like, just switch it up and try a shorter book, because I feel like, in that sense, you can read more books in a short amount of time. And again, if you're somebody that like likes to feel like you're like getting something done, you're like working towards something, I feel like shorter books are usually the way to go. So my next tip is to create a cozy reading like space and ritual for yourself that gets you like in the mood and excited to read. And I feel like for me, this usually means setting up a space that's like specifically for reading. Kind of like I'm not allowed to like use certain things or do certain things unless if I'm also reading. I feel like pairing reading with something that you like also really, really enjoy, I feel like it's just gonna like bring back the like excitement and enjoyment in the actual reading of itself. So for example, I feel like for me, I really connect my reading with my coffee intake. So like a lot of times in the morning, I let myself have as much time as I need to finish my cup of coffee. And as I'm finishing my coffee, I'm allowed to read that whole time. And so I feel like getting to like enjoy two things at once and kind of like pairing them together in my head has just really like solidified that habit for me. So like I've been reading before work for the last probably like 3 or 4 years now. And it's just one of those habits that I feel like I started on accident, and it has become something that I look forward to every night before I go to bed. Like, oh my God, I can't wait to wake up and read. But making that early morning wake up time like easier to get to because of my coffee is something that I really enjoy. I know some people, like save certain like drinks or treats or like blankets or candles that they only like use while they're reading. It's like the same thing. Just like kind of like taking like something that makes you really happy and that you really enjoy and like pairing it with your reading, I feel like it's just obviously going to make your reading experience like that much more like exciting to like do. Like you're going to be way more excited to read when you're also doing something that already excites you. So I think that one definitely works. So my next tip is to discover more book people on the internet, whether that's more bookstagrammers, book talkers, booktubers. Find people that are maybe like smaller channels or like smaller pages who have kind of similar reading taste as you and get some recommendations. Or if they're just people who are talking about books you've never heard about, those are always my favorite channels. So they're usually, I feel like, newer to the book community, so they haven't kind of been like taken over by like the popular books of the internet, because like we've all heard 1,000 reviews about certain books. Whether you've read them or not, you feel like you have because you've listened to so many freaking reviews of the same book that it's just like not fun to watch anymore. It's like annoying. Whereas like that book could actually be really good. And we've all tried to read books like that. And I feel like a lot of times they just like never live up to the hype that you've like built around the book because of all the reviews you've heard and whatever. So I feel like you just like need to spice it up. You need to like quit listening to the people on the internet that talk about the same freaking books that everybody else is talking about. Obviously, usually books are talked about for a reason. It's usually because they're good. But I feel like if you're in a reading slump, it's because you're like craving something new. You need something to like spice it up. And I feel like new people on the internet, it's just always such a fun way to spice up your reading life. 5 people are talking about things you've never heard about. It gets you excited. And I feel like along those same lines is create a TBR list for yourself, or, add them to your Goodreads, whatever, of books that they're talking about that you're like, oh my gosh, because then I feel like introduces you to new authors, maybe new genres. And it's just like the best. Like I love discovering new book people on the internet that I like. Okay, my last tip for this video is to do a huge book haul. But I say this meaning that you should do a huge library book haul. Obviously, if you have money to spend, do what you want with it. But I think like a guilt-free way of getting like the like rush of like getting new books and getting excited about new books and like new authors. I just feel like a big, huge library book haul is just like the way to go. And I think that's also fun because I feel like, at least for me, the books I pick up from the library are books that I think I want to read, but I'm not like super sure about for one reason or another. And I feel like it's usually because they're like a little different than what I'm like used to picking up. But again, I feel like when you're in a reading slump, you like need that like new kind of thing in your life. Like you want to read things that you wouldn't normally read. And so I feel like a huge library book haul where you can just like get so many books, like I would say over 10 books, and just like make a pile in your house and just like leave it out for you to kind of like look through and sort through when you like need a new book to read. I really think this one works for me really well. Like I love doing a big library book haul. I feel like a lot of people on the internet talk about their library. I don't know that many people in my real life who use the library, even if they are readers. So I'm not really sure what that's about, but I think the library is just a great resource, and it's like so fun. Like it's just free books and free stories that you already want to read at your fingertips. Like it's so fun. I think for me it's a bit easier because I'm in walking distance of my library, but obviously if it is accessible to you, I've definitely at least try it. Like I think it is so fun, and it kind of puts you on a like time frame with your reading. Like you kind of got to get through them or you got to return them. So it kind of puts a little bit of like pressure on you, which I know not everyone likes to feel, especially surrounding a hobby. but I feel like if you're in a reading slump, sometimes it's good to feel that sense of like urgency to like get going, because it kind of like brings you back to like reading a little bit more. So I think this one definitely always works for me. So now I'm gonna go ahead and tell you about like genres or like types of books that have helped me get out of a reading slump, and then I'm gonna give you a couple of recommendations for like each type of book. So my first type of book that I think is gonna help people get out of reading slumps is an action-packed, quick plot, surface level, fun, dramatic story. So for this, I have romance novels listed and fantasy novels listed. Obviously, if you're somebody who like regularly picks up those genres, not sure if this is going to be the most helpful tip, but I do think what you can take away from it is anything that you feel like is just surface level, fun, and like easy to get into. Like I feel like a lot of people get into reading slumps because like you're thinking too hard about what you're reading and it's just like not working. Like your brain just doesn't have the energy to like do that at the moment. So I feel like just picking up like bubble gum for the brain is like what you need when you're in a reading slump. Something that you kind of like work through quickly, less like feelings and not very introspective, reflective. So for recommendations for that, I have Fourth Wing, Iron Flame. I'm in the middle of Iron Flame right now. Still shocked that I ever even picked up Fourth Wing, but I did really enjoy it. Again, it's just like very like quick, plot heavy, fast paced romance, but like action packed kind of story. And it's just been like so fun. And I think a part of that obviously for me is because I don't usually pick up a lot of fantasy. So those books are like, it's just been fun to like read something new. And I started reading those in October. And so I feel like that kind of like kick-started my like, oh my gosh, I think I'm like getting out of a reading slump. And it's been so fun. My next recommendation for this category is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Again, another fantasy, but this one's set like in more like real life, but there's like a little bit of like magic in the background. You get very invested in like the characters and their story, but I wouldn't say it's making you like think like super, super hard, but like just enough to like catch your interest. At least it did for me. So I highly recommend Ninth House. And then this is probably like one of the only sci-fi books I've ever read in my life, and I was obsessed. But again, I feel like it would help you get out of reading something if you don't read sci-fi, because it's just something so new and like weird to read that it like actually interests you. It's called Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I rated this 5 stars. I haven't read it in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years probably now, and it was just so good. I think what's good about this story is that it's set in more of a reality, but also our main character is like switching dimensions and like maybe doing some like time travel type. Like it's very strange, but at the same time, it's definitely more focused around like math and science and less magic and like fairy tales. And that was really interesting and fun for me to read. So I highly recommend Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. And then I know I mentioned romance. I'm really only going to recommend like one little series that I like, Chestnut Springs by Elsie Silver. I feel like, again, if you watch any of my other videos, like, you know, I've been reading those this year or last year, whatever, and really enjoyed them. There's quite a few. They're all about like cowboys, ranchers. There's like one about a hockey player, but he's still like a rancher at heart. And they just like fall in love, and it's like silly and fun and stupid and like, but like deep enough where like I felt like a lot of what the characters were going through was like real enough, you know, where I could like get invested. Because I've read some romances and I'm like, this is so stupid that I like can't even enjoy it. Like I can't even get into it. Like it's not for me, like not at all. But these are a bit more realistic, I guess you could say. But they're like just so fun and stupid, but like in the best way. So the next like genre type of book that I'm going to tell you about is fast-paced thrillers. Again, I think the theme is just like a plot that moves quickly. Plot heavy, quick stories are just good for reading slumps. So my first recommendation is No Exit by Taylor Adams. Again, I haven't read this one in like 4 or 5 years now. It's so good. It's a whole book set in an evening, not even in a whole day, just the whole evening. And it's so good. This girl is driving home from college in a blizzard. It gets so bad she has to stop at like a rest stop or like a gas station or whatever. And you know, there's a group of probably less than 10 people in the same position as her. Like they're stuck there because of the snow. And she at some point decides to like go out to her car to call her mom to like figure out, I guess, just like a plan, let her know what's going on, whatever. She sees in the car next to her a freaking kid trapped in a cage like in the trunk of this car. And the rest of the story is just like her trying to figure out what to do, because obviously she can't really go into the rest stop and be like, hey guys, what the fuck? Because one of those people in there is crazy enough to have done that. And so it's her kind of like in her head a lot trying to figure out like who would do that and how do we like get out of the situation, because we also don't want to wait for like the snow to melt and this kid just gets like taken away, you know? So it's so good. It's just so fast paced. And I haven't read a book, I don't think, that takes place in such a short amount of time like ever before. It was so well written. I think it's like a movie or a TV show now, but I haven't watched it, so I don't know. But I highly recommend No X by Taylor Adams. My next book recommendation for this category is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Wow, wow, wow. This is definitely more of like a mystery thriller, though. I would say less fast paced, but like super interesting. And I'm not usually one for like a domestic thriller. So when things are labeled like thriller, I'm like, you know, like I don't really know. Like I've read enough of the husband wife like dramatics of it all that I'm like not into that. But this is set more around like a family, and I'm telling you, the ending, I will never forget the ending. I will never forget the ending to this book. It freaks me out so bad, and then it just ends. And I mean, like, it was so good. And I feel like it just like the setting, like the way the author could just write the setting, get you so just into the story. She tells the story, it's like the heat of summer. It's sticky, it's hot, it's humid, it's set down south. And she just like makes you really feel like you're like in the story. So again, I feel like a story that you're going to get like invested in and really care about the characters. I feel like this is a story for you. Like it was great. Like I loved it. Definitely like probably top 5 books like ever. It was amazing. The next book recommendation for this category is Misery by Stephen King. I know a lot of people have a lot to say about Stephen King, but this one just like hits. I've recommended it, I swear to God, 1,000 times. It's one of his shorter books, which I feel like definitely helps this case, but he could just write characters like so well. Like their inner monologue, like he does such a good job just like getting you invested like in their life. So this one is about an author who gets into like a car accident on the side of the road, whatever. This lady comes and picks him up, takes him home to help him like get better. You know, he's in this crazy car accident and she's like just here to help. But you know, as the story goes on, it's basically him trying to like escape this fucking crazy woman. And it's just so insane because again, it's set in not necessarily a short amount of time, but like in one setting. Like we are in this woman's house like the whole story. And the fact that he can make you get so invested in the 2 characters in the whole fucking book and in one setting, I don't know. There's something to that. And it's like something I've never read before, and it was so good. Okay, so the next recommendation I have for this category is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I read this a couple years ago. Thought it was just like so silly, so fun. He does a really good job at writing like funny horror novels, like horror, but like a little bit silly, but you're still kind of like, whoa, what the fuck? Like a little dark. And this one was just like extra super fun. I think like people start getting murdered like in this town in Georgia, I think. And this book club is trying to figure out like what's going on. And it was just so good. It was so fun. Another genre of book that usually always gets me out of a reading slump, but I haven't been reading as much of lately, are just like hard-hitting non-fiction stories about crazy shit that's happened in real life. They just always get me. So my first book recommendation for this category is Hidden Valley Road by Robert Kolker. This one is about a family of like, I think like over 10 kids, and over half of them were diagnosed with schizophrenia, and it was way back when. So this was like when they were still trying to figure out what schizophrenia even was. Like, is it an actual diagnosis? Like, what is going on? And just about the family and all the crazy shit that like happened in that family and how they were treated kind of by like their healthcare teams, especially because of these diagnoses. It was crazy. Just like very heavy, but like very interesting. He just does such a good job keeping the timeline very easily followed, but adding a lot of science and just like information into the story to like add to that timeline. It was great. It was crazy. It was great. The next book is actually one of my favorites of a couple years ago. It's called Know My Name by Chanel Miller. It's about the woman who got sexually assaulted at a party in Berkeley, at a Berkeley college party, I think it was. And it was by the swimmer Brock Turner. And just her whole journey through being an anonymous sexual assault victim. During her case, she came out with her victim impact statement and it like went viral, but her name wasn't shared. And now that everyone like this is like her kind of like introducing herself to the world and like telling her side of the story. I just don't think everyone in this world like understands how hard and crazy it is to hold people accountable for situations like this. Like he was found guilty, but his like punishment was like nothing compared to this story. I'm telling you, I sobbed so hard throughout this. It was beautifully written and very like just hard hitting. Like you just can't believe that this is like the world we're living in. It's just so crazy, but it was like so good. Obviously though, I feel like with this one specifically, I would look up trigger warnings because it was it's a very serious story, but I highly recommend. So the last genre I'm going to tell you about is a bit controversial, but I did really like these books and I do think they'll help you get out of a reading slump. I think you just kind of have to like be really careful and like really choosy about like which books in this genre you actually pick up, and it is true crime. I used to be a true crime girl through and through. Like I grew up, my mom was watching ID, all of the freaking like 60 Minutes, Dateline, anything that could be about murder. I swear to God, I watched growing up, and I think gave me quite a bit of anxiety. But then I feel like as an adult, I started listening to podcasts. I feel like I had some friends that were also like really into true crime. And I think it's just a lot of people are like, I don't want to say fascinated with it, but it's just like the unbelievable things that happen and that another person can do to like another person is just like mind-blowing. But some recommendations I have in this category, the first one is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. I want to say this one is about the Golden State Killer, and I think what was crazy about this was that I like listened to the audiobook, which was like fucking crazy. Like I remember being scared listening to it. Like the way that she described everything that's happened to these victims and all this stuff that was going on. And then I want to say like within the next like month or two, the guy was caught, like DNA. And I think that story is just crazy because like he was held accountable and it's just so insane. But again, like this one really scared me. So I'd be a little careful going into it. But yeah, she was, I don't remember if she was like a news reporter or I don't think she was a detective, but she was this lady who just became so obsessed with this story and like the victim's story and telling their story and, like holding the killer accountable for every crazy, horrible thing they've ever done. And I want to say she died before the killer was caught, but one of her like best friends and like coworkers like finished her story and like published the book, and it's just great. It's a great book. It's crazy though. And then this next one I read because it was a book club pick, I believe, for this like online book club I was like trying to be a part of. But it's called American Predator by Maureen Callahan. Oh my God, this one scared me so bad too, like so bad. And it's set in Alaska, and this guy was just fucking crazy. Like he was a murderer and he was fucking crazy, and just the shit he would do and how he like got away with it for so long, I think it was really what blew my mind. But also like the stupid shit he did to get caught eventually was like almost like he was like wanting to be caught. It was just crazy. So I feel like true crime, it's not for everyone. I used to read and listen to a lot of it. I don't anymore, especially ever since I moved out. It's just not something that I think is like healthy for me. But I definitely feel like crazy, just any sort of like crazy nonfiction story, anything that you like read the back of and you just think like, oh my God, this is real, I feel like will help you get out of a reading slump. So I hope this video was at least a little helpful. If you have any tips and tricks or like book recommendations to get out of a reading slump, I would love to know them. I feel like we all need to build up kind of like an arsenal of different tools to help get each other out of reading slumps. They're never fun to be in, especially when you are somebody who loves reading so much. I really hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.